Hey everyone, I'm Jake from Jacob Media, and today we'll be talking about the Canon SL2 in 2021. Yes, that's right, this is the first video for Jacob Media in 2021. I'm super excited, so let's get into it. To start off, the Canon SL2 was released on June 29th of 2017, and at the time of its release, it received a lot of positive feedback. Some of the things I loved about the camera were the small body, the ease of use, and the video capabilities. With that all said, let's get into the specs. Starting off as the image sensor, and the SL2 has a 24.2 megapixel APS-C CMOS sensor, which is powered by a Digic 7 processor. In my opinion, the Digic 7 processor is perfect for a camera this size, and it's going to be great for beginners. Moving on, we have the ISO range, and in the SL2, it goes from 100 up to 25,600 and is expandable up to 51,200. However, I wouldn't take this camera over 1600 because once you get it above that, you start to see a little bit of noise and grain added to your photos or videos. After that, we have frames per second, and the SL2 can do 5 frames per second in single shot AF and in AI servo AF, but it drops down to 2.5 frames per second when you put it in silent shooting. I'd also like to mention that when you're using live view mode on the SL2, I'm pretty sure it drops down to 2.5 frames per second also. Moving on, we have the lens mount, and on the SL2 it has an EFS mount, which means it can take EF lenses or EFS lenses, whether it's from Canon or some other third party. Next, we have autofocus points, and the SL2 only has 9 autofocus points, so it's not really geared toward photographers with only 5 frames per second and 9 autofocus points. However, I can tell you that the center autofocus point is cross type, whereas the other 8 are vertical and horizontal line sensitive. Now I'd like to talk about focus modes, and the SL2 has 4 focus modes, which are single shot AF, predictive AI servo AF, AI focus AF, which switches between AI servo and single shot AF, and it also has manual focus. After that, we have card slots, and the SL2 has one UHS 1 card slot right in the bottom here, and it's also compatible with something called iFi cards, which I've never heard of, but apparently they allow you to wirelessly and automatically upload photos and videos to your computer or phone, which in my opinion sounds a lot like Wi-Fi and NFC, and the Canon SL2 has that, so I don't understand the point of the iFi cards. Moving on, we have buffer depth, and the SL2 can do 22 frames in JPEG, but it can only do 5 frames in RAW. So for beginners, this is perfect because they're going to be shooting in JPEG anyways, but for professionals, 5 frames isn't really that much. Now I'd like to move on to video capabilities, and this is where this camera is great. The Canon SL2 can do 1920 by 1080 in 60, 50, 30, 25, and 24 frames per second. It can also do 1280 by 720 in 60, 50, 30, and 25 frames per second. And finally, it can do 640 by 480 in 30 and 25 frames per second. Not to mention, it also has dual pixel AF, which used to be one of the best autofocusing systems in DSLRs. As for focus modes for shooting video, you have 3 to choose from, which are face tracking, smooth zone AF, and live 1-point AF. After that, we have stabilization, and in the SL2, it doesn't have any in-body stabilization. All the stabilization is going to be done within the lens that you have. After that, we have a quick spec, which is EVF or OVF, and the SL2 has an OVF right here. And that just means that it's an optical viewfinder, so what you see through the viewfinder is what you get. However, I did forget that the viewfinder on here only has 95% coverage, so I guess what you see is not necessarily what you get. Moving on, we have the LCD monitor, and this is a 3-inch 1.04 million dot vari-angle touchscreen. In my opinion, the resolution on here is good enough, but some people might say otherwise. After that, we have another quick spec, which is Wi-Fi connectivity, and like I said earlier, the SL2 does have Wi-Fi. So all you need is the Canon Connect app, and you should be able to transfer your videos and photos to your phone. Moving on, we have battery, and the SL2 takes this thing, which is an LPE17 battery, and Canon states on their website that it should get anywhere from 770 to 840 shots when you're using the viewfinder, but when you're in live view, it'll only get 260 to 290 shots. Now from my experience of using this camera, I've been able to get anywhere from 2 to 2.5 hours of battery life, so I would recommend getting at least 2 or 3 extra batteries. Next we have the weight and dimensions, and the SL2 comes in weighing just under a pound at 15.98 ounces. As for the dimensions, the SL2 is 4.82 by 3.65 by 2.75 inches. So yes, this is a very small camera body, and if you're looking for that sort of thing, then this camera could be the one for you. And finally, we have the price of the Canon SL2, and at the time of recording, it comes in at around $649.99 on Amazon, but I've been able to find cheaper options on places like eBay or Facebook Marketplace. Now that we've gone through all the specs, I'd like to go over the pros and cons of the Canon SL2. Starting off with the pros. First of all, the video capabilities of the SL2 are amazing. It lets you do 1920 by 1080 in 60, 30, and 24 frames per second. Secondly is the body size. It's so small and light that I barely ever notice it in my camera bag, and it doesn't put a lot of strain on my neck when I'm wearing the neck strap, so it's pretty great for body size. Another pro is that it has decent ISO capabilities. It can go all the way up to 25,600, expandable up to 51,200, whereas my Canon 80D can only go up to 16,000. And the final pro is dual pixel autofocus. This autofocusing system is one of the fastest in any DSLR ever made, so I'm really happy that it's in this camera. Now let's move on to the cons. First of all, the Canon SL2 can only do 5 frames per second, which is really slow. My Canon 80D can do about 7 frames per second, which is a huge step up in my opinion from the SL2. Another con is the low buffer depth. The SL2 can only do 5 frames in RAW, and I've run into issues when I've run out the buffer. The third con is that the battery life isn't the best. The LPE17 battery doesn't hold much of a charge, and at 2.5 hours, you're going to be needing a lot of batteries. And the final con is that it only has 9 autofocus points. The fact that it only has 9 AF points makes it really hard to shoot photos, and you find yourself having to focus and readjust a lot. So the Canon SL2 is a great camera, and I've honestly loved using it. However, nowadays it would be a bad investment. This is because there's a newer version of this camera out, and it's called the Canon SL3, and it has better features and it's cheaper. So in my opinion, you shouldn't buy this camera just because the SL3 is a better option at this point. Anyways, if you'd like to check out the Canon SL2 or SL3, I'm going to link down below the Canon and Amazon links. Alright, that's going to wrap up the first video of 2021 for JChem Media. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, subscribe by clicking right here. Thanks for watching, and always remember to capture great moments.